Hey, what's up, everybody? Frederick Polk here. So back when we first started as a country, farmers were running into a little problem. The price of corn had dropped dramatically. And, well, it wasn't economically viable to take it to market, not by the bushel, and not by the wagon load over unreliable roads that might not be there, not like we have today. Well, I guess it depends on the state that you live in. And if you've ever bought corn, in your produce section at the supermarket, you can kind of imagine, yeah, if you had a whole bunch of them to even make it worth the trip, probably it ain't gonna be worth it. So what do? Well, here's what you do, especially if you're these farmers. You turn it into liquid form. Liquid form in the form of whiskey. And you put it in bottles. Well, now it's suddenly way more economical to transport. But there's just one problem. Taxman wanted his cut. And the cut they wanted, because it was an excise tax, as in, against liquor and spirits and all that, well, it didn't make it so profitable anymore. So when these taxmen came around and taxed these farmers, they didn't want to pay it. So that's where you get the whole tarring and feathering and all that stuff. Well, it got so bad that old George Washington, our first president, decided he was going to put on the uniform again. He's going to lead an army into the field, and by God, he's going to make them mine. And he did. And from that, we get the Whiskey Rebellion. And to this date, George Washington is the only commander-in-chief that has ever led an American army in the field. And I sure hope it stays that way. So, why am I talking about all this? Well, if I were to say the term American manufacturing, what do you think of? Well, if you're anything like me, you might think of big car companies. Dodge, Ford, General Motors, heck, Chevrolet. Maybe a used to be good aircraft company like Boeing. So they ain't so good now. Or maybe some stuff from your youth. Like for me, it was Apple computers that I used in school, with the floppy disks. And we had a Texas Instrument computer at home that I'd play, little learning games on. Or how about Zenith Television? They don't make them here in the U.S. anymore, but my granddad had one. It was an American TV company, personal electronics. Or maybe the big one, General Electric, GE. They still make stuff. And that's what I would kind of think about if someone said American manufacturing. What about Jack Daniels or Jim Beam? Did you think about them? Well, you should, because that is part of American manufacturing. In fact, it's a $4 billion annual part of American manufacturing. $2.5 billion of that is in exports. And today, Donald Trump just said he wants to slap a 200% tariff on all imports from the EU of liquor, beer, and wine. Now, given the track record of that's happened already and how much we've pissed off the rest of the world, especially the EU, what do you think their likely response is going to be? Now, they hadn't said anything yet, but I probably have a good idea. Well, you and I probably have a good idea of what's coming, especially if he carries that threat out. Now, what does that do, you think? It's like, well, it's just liquor. Well, but it's not. See, today I wrote an article about how rugged individualism is killing us. And in that, I had a piece on this Buddhist concept called dependent origination. And basically what dependent origination talks about is how everything's sort of interconnected. And that's kind of what this tariff would do to that $4 billion part of our American economy. Because you see, there's a lot of agricultural products that are in liquor. Think of beer. You got barley, you got hops, you got grains for whiskey. Some of it's even corn-based. Well, some of the stuff I would buy from the good old boy. That ain't so legal, but we won't get into that. Or how about factories that help manufacture and produce all those raw materials and goods, or even the finished products? And I'm talking about glass, and the gas to transport all these things from the trucks, label makers, artists. I could go on and on. Or how about the small businesses that rely on it? And I'm not just talking about liquor stores. I'm talking about restaurants, which are already high. Heck, I was out with the family for restaurant week a couple days ago. And, mom said, "Hey, I want a Cosmo." And I said, "Okay, we're out. We don't go out too often." It's $17. What do you think a 200% tariff's going to do on $17? $4 billion annually. And the two biggest states are deep red states that make liquor. Tennessee, obviously, with Jack Daniels, because they account in sales, just Tennessee, with everything they make, at $983 million a year. Kentucky's behind them with $505 million. Bourbon distributors, are up in arms right now, just from what's happened with Canada on the 25% tariffs. 25. We ain't talking about 200. We talking about 25 right now. It's hurting them. Of the boycotts that are going on already in Canada and that have started in Europe. What do you think a 200% tariff is going to do to American-made goods? I really don't know what to say about all that. I mean, even at this point, even the threat of it, they're taking it seriously. And they should. Well, again, this is what happens when you elect unserious people. But unfortunately, the stuff they do tends to have some very serious consequences. And it looks like, that $4 billion slice of our economy, it's about to have some very serious impact. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Keep the faith, defend democracy, and I'll see you later.